Hello, friends. Happy Thursday, or whenever you're listening to this. We have reached the episode you have been waiting for. Or at least, I don't know, people like me would wait for this episode because we're talking about job change. This is our third episode in that series. Like I said a few episodes ago, I've been doing this for over 7 years now as of today's recording. So I'm trying to give you the best of the bunch of the themes I've seen over years and years and years of talking with people about changing jobs. So today we're going to get into the logistics. Finally, right? This is another place where we can hold ourselves up. We can make things too complicated. We can find new overwhelm and stop. Or we can simply make the experience of job change harder on ourselves because we do feel scattered. We might know we need to cover all these things and address all of these logistics, but we might not go in with a plan. That's what this episode is going to help you do. We are going to look at a lot of logistics today, and they're going to be specific to changing jobs. But the theme of today's episode is how do you approach a process like this intentionally? How do you name the decisions that you are going to make? And how do you identify the questions that are worth answering so you know what you're doing with your time? So when you're doing something, you know it's a good use of your time. That's what we really want to be paying attention to here. So let's get into it. One thing I hear a lot from people who are considering changing jobs and are hesitating to make any formal commitments, not necessarily like handing their notice in, but even with themselves, committing to, okay, I'm going to be gone by the summer, or I'm going to send in an application by next week, or whatever it may be. There can be hesitation because of the numbers. We live in the real world where we need real money to pay for real stuff like food and clothing and shelter and medicine. So, one of the things that I ask clients to do, which sometimes I'm going to be honest with you, I have to ask them to do it more than once. If you are a client of mine and you're listening to this, I'm not calling you out. Okay. You're not alone. I've had to ask most people to do the math more than once. And here's why it can be a lot. We can have a lot of money malarkey going on in our minds. We cannot want to look at the numbers. We can not really feel that in tune with our numbers. So we might not even know where to look. When I say do the math, what I mean is, what do you need? What are you spending every month? What is your life cost? What is your bare minimum life cost? What is your current life cost? What is your ideal life cost? How much do you need to be bringing in every week or month? And for what? It's very easy for people to just throw out a number that they think is a good number. But what is it for? Where is it going? When you start getting really clear on your numbers, you make it easier for yourself to make a plan. If you know we have this much in savings, we have this much in savings that I don't want to have to use and will only use in the most dire of circumstances, but it's there. We have this much in savings I absolutely will never touch, but I know it's there. It costs this much every month for our bare minimum. I had a client once who was considering her job change timeline, and she was very scared of everything happening in the summer because she had kids, and she was like, everything changes in the summer. I don't have kids, but I get this from all of my clients with kids. The summer is a different time. It's like we all pack up and move to a different planet for a few months when schedules are different and activities are different and spending is different. So I asked her to do the math, and I had to ask her, I think maybe more than twice, but she did it. And here's why she's glad she did it. She found out she needed less money than she thought she did to pay for the summer, which is always just great news. But as a means of protecting herself, her mind had inflated the number that she was going to need so that she didn't end up with too little, right? So kind, such a nice gesture on our mind's part, except it had inflated to the point where she felt unsafe in making any changes to her job. When she did the math, she got to see, what do I want to spend? What do I want it to cost? And then she got to decide, okay, do we have enough? If I decide to leave this job and then I decide to take a break, or I decide to take this other job, but take a month off, she got to explore her options and know how the math would play out given any scenario. Another thing that's going to happen when you do the math is you are going to find opportunities for choice. Here's a funny thing about how much your life costs. Your life costs as much as you spend on it, but we are adaptable creatures and we get used to things relatively quickly. So even though your current life costs what it does because you spend what you do on the things that you pay for, you have opportunities for choice in that. I'm not saying, okay, downsize and move to a studio apartment with your whole family in it so that your rent is less. I'm not saying to do that. But I'm saying you will recognize choice when you do the math. Because if you do the math and you don't like the math, if you don't like that you're spending this or that much on things, there might be opportunities for you to change some things. Are you allowed to be upset at how expensive everything is? Yes, absolutely. Have your feelings. I am not here to take your feelings away from you. But then I want you to recognize where you do have agency and see if there's anything you want to change. So if you are in this position where you are considering when is the best time to get a job, what are the criteria for leaving my job? Do I have to actually secure another job before I leave this one or I give my notice? The math is one of the most important things you can start with. It is one of the biggest gifts you can give yourself. Otherwise, we risk just operating out of fear and scarcity. And the math is over here behind this like shade that we're just refusing to pull up because we're like, don't want to look at it. We don't want to deal with it. It's overwhelming. It's too much. I don't like it, whatever the case may be. And we barrel along making things work that seem like they're not disturbing the math. So we don't know exactly what's happening there, but it looks like it's fine. So I'm just going to keep going. It limits your agency. It doesn't empower you to see all of your options. We just want to know the math. Okay. Speaking of numbers, another thing that comes up when I am coaching clients through the logistics of job change are timeframes. One of the hardest questions to answer is, what are you waiting for? How long are you willing to wait? And if you have me as your coach, I'm going to ask you, but really though, what are we waiting for? This is not to say rushing is better and doing things immediately is good and waiting is wrong. If we're going to wait though, we want to know what we're waiting for. You can have a really good answer. As long as you know and like your answer, it's a good answer. But I'm going to challenge you to define some time frames so that you don't run the risk of staying where you are because the path of least resistance is the path you're already on. And I don't want you to wake up in 5 years still in this same position thinking, wasn't I going to change jobs at one point? Why am I still here? We don't want that. We want you to trust yourself to be a person who pays attention to and acts on your own wants and needs. So if you're having a want or need right now to change this job situation, we want to make it easy for you to take action on that. And you don't have to take action on it tomorrow, but we want to have some time frames set up. Here's what that looks like when I'm working with clients one-on-one. We can get into the specifics of really planning this out. Sometimes there's a very clear answer because something's coming up at work and they do not want to be involved. I do not want to be here when this project starts, when this person leaves, blah, 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 blah. Great. Use that. If that's there, that is a perfectly acceptable answer. Sometimes people question, like, oh, is that me being weak or reactive? Should I just tough it out? Is that not a good reason to leave? I'm going to tell you this right now. Do what you want. Other times it's easy for people to answer this time frame question because of things going on for them. They have stuff in their personal lives like physical health, family stuff, kid stuff. Sometimes there's going to be something in their lives that takes a lot of time and energy and attention, and they don't want to have the job in the mix during that. So, whatever you want to name as this is what I'm going to base my timeline on. Now, if it's not an easy question to answer, here's what I usually do. The math will help this. If you know, oh, I don't actually have enough in savings to take a month off and feel good about it right now, but I want to take a month off. Great. We can build a timeline around that. How much do you have to save? How much are you going to save every week or whatever? What does that mean for when you're going to have enough savings, when it's okay to start your month off? So the math will help you here, I promise. But this is one of those squishy things where if all you know is that you want to change, it can feel a little dangerous to just take action on that. Like, okay, well, do I just decide I'm going to leave now? It can feel like you're creating a little arbitrary deadline for yourself. So what I like to do is just throw it in the future for a second. A year from now, are you going to be okay if you're still in this job? Or are you going to be a different emotion? How will you feel if you're here a year from now? Usually people are like, oh my God, if I'm here a year from now, I will be so upset. I'll be so frustrated with myself. That absolutely cannot happen. Okay, good to know. Let's shrink it down a little bit. If you're here 6 months from now, what's the feeling? Sometimes people are like, I can handle 6 months if I'm leaving. I feel like I have 6 months left in me, but like only if that's my last day. Okay, interesting to know. Sometimes I ask people, well, how are you going to feel if you're here in 6 months still? And their answer is like, oh my God, no, no, no. They find out from themselves, like, oh, no, no, no. I got to be out like 6 weeks or less. 6 months is unacceptable. Can't imagine. So you might not know the answer until you ask the question. You might not know how you feel until you ask yourself to consider how you might feel. And we're guessing, right? We have to guess because it's the future and we don't know and we can't know. But you want to change for a reason. So remember, this is not about rushing you. It's not about imposing arbitrary deadlines. It's about getting you what you want. And if you don't want to stay for a year, you might be at risk at defaulting to staying for a year if you don't really clarify what you want. So if you don't want to stay for a year, we have to find a way to move that into an I want statement. I want to leave in the next 6 months. I will be gone 6 months from now or sooner, right? This brings us conveniently into the next component of addressing logistics, which is honoring your boundaries and knowing your limits. Everyone has different limits at different times. You might have an enormous resilience battery with incredible capacity, and it might be all the way depleted right now. So you might have different boundaries for what levels of stress you can handle, what level of uncertainty you can handle than you might have even 2 months ago, or than you might normally have. You want to be mindful of how you're using pressure in this situation. Pressure can help, pressure can hinder, pressure can motivate, pressure can constrain. We want you to be in charge of how you're using pressure so you don't feel like pressure is something outside of yourself that you have no control over. Again, you want to know your math. You want to know your financial runway. So when your mind inevitably asks the question, is this the right thing to do? Is this too soon? Am I rushing it? Is this safe? Is it okay to take time off? Is it okay to quit before I have another job? Is it okay to apply for this job even though it pays less? When those questions come up, deep breath. We don't want you searching for the correct answer. We want you to be searching for your truth. Your truth is the real answer there. Is it okay to take a month off? You're in charge. Is it okay to decide I'm going to hand in my notice in 3 months, whether or not I have another job? You're in charge. Does that feel like it creates pressure that will help you actually get your butt out in the world, networking, talking about your job hunt, having conversations you wouldn't otherwise, exploring opportunities you wouldn't otherwise? Does it create pressure that helps you? We've all been there. We've all needed that. Or does the idea of that create pressure that feels like it will hurt? Does it feel like it will make you feel less safe and not good? Now, I'm going to tell you, it's rarely an either or. Sometimes it is. It's fine. And you're like, oh no, there's a clear answer here. It is helpful or it feels harmful. But a lot of the time, you can tell it's going to be helpful. You can tell I'm going to stay at this job for another 5 years unless I give myself a freaking reason and a little bit of pressure to make a change. And you can also feel like, that doesn't feel very much. This is where I want you to come back to really being in tune with your limits and your boundaries right now. You are the only one who can tell what you can handle, what's going to be helpful, even if it does feel a little uncomfortable, but that's okay. Or if it's something that you is really not going to serve you right now. And I just want to be the voice for whatever way you choose to do it is going to be okay. It doesn't have to look good or make sense to anyone else. That brings us to what if my decisions affect other people? This is not even just another episode. This might be like an entirely other podcast, which I do not have the energy for at this moment. So I'm going to say this as concisely as I can, and it will not cover everything that it can. Sorry. But if you are making a decision about your job that affects another person, there are different ways you can go about it. And there are different schools of thought on this. If your finances are independent from each other and this is not going to affect their safety and well being, there's a world in which you adopt the mentality, my choices are my own, and you are entitled to your opinion about them. The end. Usually, when I'm talking with clients who are concerned about their decisions affecting a spouse or a partner or someone they live with, there's a little bit more entanglement than that. There will be a little more consequence felt by this other person from their choices. So here's what I will say to that. Let's do the math there too. And not just financial, but let's be honest. How will or might your decisions impact this other person? Let's just be really crystal clear and let's divide it into facts and thoughts if we need to. This will factually affect this other person because we've gotten healthcare from my job before. And if I leave it, we will have to get other healthcare. That could be a fact. Okay. This new job I want has an entirely different schedule and we won't have overlapping days off anymore. They might feel bad about that. Okay. That could be a thought. So, first, do your own math. And I'm using the term math loosely, as I always do. Okay. But we don't want to be ignorant to how our choices affect other people. And we don't want to be selfish. I know you, and you don't want to be selfish. And we also don't want to hold ourselves back from making choices just because they might affect somebody, because they could negatively affect somebody, but we might actually not know until we do the math. And we might not actually be able to know because we might be making up, oh, this will be bad. And it might not. So I want you to do the math on the supposed consequences, the impact that you can foresee or imagine happening on the person you're concerned about, and then you can bring it to them. You can propose a conversation, a conscious conversation where you're not asking them for permission to make your own life choices, because that's not how it works, but you are coming to the table as a member of the team and you want the team to have a team meeting and you want to review the factual and potential impact, positive and negative. I should have mentioned this, but make sure when you're doing your math, you're not just looking for negatives. How could this positively, or how will this positively impact this person in your mind? Make sure you write that down too. And then you can propose a team meeting. You can frame the team meeting as not one where we are going to decide if I do this or if I do that, or what will or won't happen. We don't have to make that the outcome of this meeting. You can be really clear. This meeting is just to review these consequences and for us to see what questions and feelings and thoughts come up. And then we're going to decide where we go from there at the end of the meeting. But no decisions will be made about anyone's future right now. There is a lot more to say on this. And if this is the part of the episode where you're like, this is what I need more of, I will point you towards Terrence Real, or Terry Real, as he is known and quoted sometimes, and his idea of a democratic relationship. You can go Google him and you can see what you think of this idea. At some point down the line, I can do a whole episode on this idea, but it can be a framework that people use for decision making in a partnered relationship. Hopefully that gives you some way to address what are the logistics of changing my job if it affects another person. We're almost done. We have two more things that I want to point out as these will help you in your logistics journey of job change. The first one, and it is so important, is to make a game plan for different outcomes. Oh boy. So when I have a client who wants to change jobs and they are done with their current job, they cannot stay there any longer. They need to get out for their mental well-being, for their physical health, for their whatever, whatever, whatever. And they are pretty terrified of what's going to happen on the other side of that job change because they don't know if they're going to get another job right away or how long it will take to find an aligned job because they don't want to just take any job. It can be a gridlock situation where we're like, well, I'm out of options. I got to stay because I can't predict the future. Sometimes all you need in that situation is a plan. And sometimes you just need to know you've planned for multiple outcomes because we can have our tunnel vision ideal plan where we're like, okay, I'm going to quit this job and then I'm going to have exactly 17 days off because that is how many days off I want to have to relax and unwind and enjoy. By the way, I would say this is just me personally, but everyone I've ever worked with who's taken time off after their job needs more than 17 days. I'm just going to say that. Do with that what you will, but 2 weeks between jobs, not enough. It could be enough for you. It could be enough. It won't be. It could be, though. It absolutely could be. It won't. But no, take 2 weeks off only if that's what you want, but take more. Okay, so What do I mean? Game plan for different outcomes. If you have your runway, your financial runway, because you did the math and you know, okay, up until this point, we're going to be super comfortable, not going to be an issue at this point in the timeline. If this job hasn't started yet, or this person hasn't gotten back to me, or I haven't found anything aligned, I'm scared that we're going to reach this point, things aren't going to go to plan, and we're going to be screwed. Okay. My ask of you at that point in your thinking is make a plan for that outcome. You might have an ideal way things go. Things happen in this order in this timeline. Great. And if they don't, how are you going to handle it? How are you going to keep yourself paying attention to what matters, feeling safe, taking care of what you need to take care of? You don't have to know exactly what you're going to do a month, 3 months out from now. You can put a meeting in the calendar, a team meeting. And it could be you and your partner. It could be you and your career coach. It could be you and your mentor. It could be you and yourself. Well, we're going to put a meeting on the calendar. And if things haven't gone the way we want them to a month from now, 6 weeks from now, whatever, we're going to reassess. We're going to do updated math, see where we're at, see what we need. So far, my examples have been for the idea that you've left a job and you're planning for what happens after that. So let me give another example too, because that's not everyone's situation. One client I was working with was very committed to leaving his job. He wanted to get another job. He didn't want to take any time off. He wanted to secure a new job first. However, he had a timeline for leaving his current job. So we just made options for game plans. The ideal plan, the way you want it to go, is you get a new job, it's aligned, you're excited about it, you hand in your notice, bada bing, bada boom. If by this date you don't have a prospect you're in love with, you're not going to force yourself. This was his plan that he came up with. He wasn't going to force himself to take whatever job. He was going to reassess. Does he need to do things differently with his job search? If he didn't have a new prospect by another separate date, he was going to give himself permission to consider, is it time to hand in notice, even though I don't have another job? He wasn't committing to anything. He wasn't saying, I'm going to leave by this date, no matter what, because that wasn't his truth. But he wanted to keep himself honest. He didn't want to have one wave of job applications, get frustrated and discouraged, and then just go back to maintaining the status quo for the next 6 months. So he set up these little milestone speed bumps in the weeks and months ahead so that he could know, I have a plan at this date for if I have a great job prospect, if I have a new job, if I don't have any prospects, if I have some prospects I don't like, but they're there. He had a plan for multiple scenarios. That makes sense? Final logistics note. This is going to point you back to one of the early episodes of Decision Masters, episode 22, a fantastic interview with my friend and colleague, Laura Brennan. She is a networking expert. She is a pitch expert and coach. That episode is all about pitching yourself and using your people. If you are in this logistics phase of job change and you don't know where to start and you're like, well, I could spend my entire rest of my life on LinkedIn, but I don't know if that's going to get me anywhere. I'm not saying do or don't use LinkedIn. I am saying make sure no matter what, you use your people. If you don't know what that means, listen to this episode. I'll link it in the show notes. Essentially, I want you to realize you have people in your life all around you who would be willing to aid in your quest. That's how Laura puts it in the interview, and I love it. If you need some help in this area because you are now thinking, what could possibly come from talking to people? What am I going to do? Just like walk around my life talking to people about, I want to change jobs. I'll also link this in the show notes. I want you to watch Tina Selig's TED Talk. I think that's how you say her name. She's a Stanford professor, and the title of it is about luck, increasing your luck. But if you listen to it, you will see how it is not luck she's talking about. It is conscious choices to talk to people. That's going to be a fun little boost, I think, if you're at all skeptical about what can come of talking to your dog groomer. Okay. I am putting everything out there because you know what? I want you to get what you want. I want you to take the actions you need to take. And will they feel completely safe and secure? Maybe, but maybe not. The bigger decisions you make, sometimes the less security you feel in them. So that's why it's my job to help you feel equipped to be confident in your choices, even in the presence of uncertainty. I don't know a world in which we don't get uncertainty with every purchase. It's free with every purchase. free with every decision. Oh, you made a decision you feel confident in? Great. Here's some uncertainty. It just comes in the bag. All right. Did we cover everything we needed to? Yes. We went in a lot of different directions today, and I'm talking pretty quickly because I thought we had a lot to get through, and I'm probably pretty caffeinated, if I'm being honest. So I hope this has given you some stuff to chew on. You can pick and choose what you focus on. What do I need to think about to help me just this week? You don't need to digest this entire episode and go to work in all 17 different areas. If you are ready for help, though, organizing your thoughts around this stuff and making a conscious plan and taking decisive action one step at a time, that is when it's time to talk about working together. So you can go to kirstenparker.com/services and just look at what do I have going on right now. At this moment in time, I'm working with people one-on-one, and you can click the link in the show notes to send in a little query about working together and we can chat about it. So I hope you have the best day. I hope you take some deep breaths and you remember I've figured out everything in my entire life up till this point, and I will figure this out too, one thing at a time. You got this. I'll see you next week. Hey, want to find out your decision style? Obviously, go take the decision style quiz. It's in the show notes and at kirstenparker.com/quiz. We all have our style when it comes to making decisions, but do you know how to use your default way of thinking to your advantage? Or do you mainly get stuck in the most annoying parts of overthinking and people pleasing? The decision style quiz has your answers, my friend. Take it right now at kirstenparker.com/quiz.